In 1999, NASA burned $125 million in the blink of an eye. They had built a robotic space probe, the Mars Climate Orbiter. It traveled 416 million miles. It executed its maneuvers perfectly, and then silence. It didn't just crash, it disintegrated in the Martian atmosphere. The engineers scrambled to find the bug. Was it the thrusters? The software? The fuel lines? No, the problem was much stupider than that. The engineering team at Lockheed Martin, who built the thrusters, had programmed the force data in Imperial units, pounds force, but the navigation team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab assumed the data was in metric units, newtons. One team was speaking English, the other was speaking math. And because of that simple translation error, a masterpiece of technology turned into expensive fireworks. This disaster happened because even today, humanity is living in two different worlds. We think of the metric system as just school stuff or European stuff, but the story of how we got these measurements, the meter, the gram, the liter, is actually one of the bloodiest, most chaotic and heroic sagas in human history. It involves beheadings, pirates, secret errors, and a metal cylinder that ruled the world for a century. Welcome to Unseen. Today, we are measuring the madness behind the metric system. Imagine you are a peasant in France in 1780. You want to buy some cloth. In your village, a foot is 12 inches, but you walk 2 miles to the next town, and there a foot is 11 inches. You cross the river, now a foot is 14 inches. Before the metric system, measurement was a complete dumpster fire. It was based on the whims of local lords or the body parts of dead kings. There were over 250,000 different units of weights and measures in France alone. This wasn't just annoying, it was a tool of oppression. Feudal lords would intentionally change the size of the bushel to tax peasants more grain while giving them less. If the lord needed more money, he just made the bushel bigger. It was a rigged game. So, when the French Revolution exploded in 1789, measuring wasn't a boring administrative task, it was revolutionary. The people demanded one king, one law, one weight, one measure. Enter the Bishop Talleyrand. He proposed a radical idea to the National Assembly. He said, "We need a unit that doesn't belong to any king. It shouldn't belong to France. It shouldn't belong to anyone. It should be derived from the only thing that is eternal, the Earth itself." The idea was elegant. Take the distance from the North Pole to the equator, divide that massive line by 10 million. That tiny fraction, that would be the new unit, the meter, from the Greek word metron, meaning measure. It was perfect, natural, eternal. There was just one tiny problem. Nobody actually knew exactly how big the Earth was. To find the meter, France had to measure the world. They couldn't measure the whole globe, obviously, so they decided to measure a specific slice of the meridian arc, the line running from Dunkirk in the north of France down to Barcelona in Spain. If they got that distance right, they could extrapolate the size of the Earth and calculate the perfect meter. They hired 2 astronomers for the job, Pierre Méchain and Jean-Baptiste Delambre. It was supposed to take 1 year. It took 7, and frankly, it's a miracle they survived. You have to understand the timing. They started this mission in 1792, right as the French Revolution turned into the Reign of Terror. Delambre went north, Méchain went south, and they were carrying strange brass instruments, climbing church towers and looking through telescopes. Every town they entered thought they were spies. Delambre was arrested multiple times. He had to explain high-level geometry to angry mobs who just wanted to chop his head off. He had to get passports of science signed by the revolutionary government. But the government kept changing. One week he has a valid pass, the next week the guy who signed it has been executed, and the pass is a death warrant. Meanwhile, in the south, Méchain had it even worse. He got into Spain right as France and Spain went to war. He was trapped. He was thrown into house arrest. He had accidents that broke his ribs. He almost died of malaria. But Michel was a perfectionist, a neurotic, obsessive perfectionist. And in the heat of Spain, he made a mistake. He took a measurement of the latitude of Barcelona, but the numbers didn't match his previous data. He panicked. He couldn't figure out why. Instead of publishing the discrepancy, he hid it. He wrote secret letters, terrified that he would be exposed as a failure. He drove himself into a deep depression, convinced he had ruined the eternal measure. Eventually, after 7 years of hell, the two men met back in Paris. They combined their data, they did the math, and they presented the world with the length of the meter. They cast a bar of pure platinum. This bar was the Mètre des Archives, the standard for the whole world. Here is the tragic irony. Michel knew the data was slightly off, and modern satellites have confirmed it. The Earth isn't a perfect sphere, it's a bit squashed. The calculation was off by about 0.2 millimeters. The meter is wrong. It's not exactly 1/10 millionth of the distance from the pole to the equator. Michel died knowing this secret, but it didn't matter. The world accepted the bar. The chaos of measurement was over. Well, for almost everyone. So if this system was so scientific and revolutionary, why is the United States still using inches and feet? It wasn't because they hated the French. In fact, Thomas Jefferson loved the French. He was huge on science. He wanted the US to adopt the metric system immediately. In 1793, France sent a scientist named Joseph Dombey to America. Dombey was carrying two incredibly important objects, a standard copper meter and a standard copper kilogram grave. He was going to present them to Thomas Jefferson in Congress, but Dombey never made it. His ship ran into a massive storm in the Atlantic and was blown off course, right into the hands of Caribbean pirates. These weren't just random pirates, they were British privateers. They hated the French. They captured Dombey, threw him in a prison on the island of Montserrat, where he died. And the crate? The pirates didn't know what the scientific instruments were. They just saw copper. They auctioned off the contents. The metric standards eventually made it to the US, but years later, and into the hands of a different politician, Edmund Randolph, who didn't care about science. The momentum was lost. Because of a storm and some pirates, the US missed its window. By the time the conversation came up again, the Industrial Revolution had started. American factories were already tooled for inches and feet. Changing them became too expensive, and that is why today American mechanics need 2 sets of wrenches. Let's fast forward to 1899. The metric system is taking over the world. Scientists gather in Paris and create the ultimate object. They made Le Grand Cas, the international prototype of the kilogram. It is a cylinder of platinum and iridium about the size of a golf ball. It was locked in a vault under 3 glass bell jars in a basement in Sèvres of France. 3 people had to have 3 different keys to open the door. For 130 years, this golf ball was the kilogram. If you bought a pound of sugar or weighed gold or measured medicine, ultimately that measurement was traced back to copies, which were traced back to this one metal cylinder in a basement in France. If someone sneezed on Le Grand Cas, the weight of the world changed. If someone dropped it and chipped it, the kilogram became lighter for everyone on Earth. And that was the problem. Reality is messy. Even platinum and iridium isn't stable. Over decades, the scientists noticed something terrifying. The copies of the kilogram sent around the world were drifting. Le Grand Cas was losing mass. It had lost about 50 micrograms, the weight of an eyelash. This sounds small, but in the world of high-end physics, medicine, and space travel, the weight of an eyelash is the difference between a cure in a poison or a satellite orbiting or crashing. We couldn't have our base reality defined by a piece of metal that was slowly evaporating. We needed something better. So, the scientists went back to the drawing board. They wanted to do what the French revolutionaries tried to do, find the constant of nature. But the Earth changes, metal changes. What doesn't change? The fundamental laws of the universe. In 2019, the scientific community voted to redefine the kilogram. They killed Lagrange. They decided to define mass using the Planck constant, a number that describes the size of energy packets in quantum mechanics. To do this, they built the Kibble balance. It's the most complex scale ever created. It doesn't use counterweights. It balances physical mass against electromagnetic force. It allows us to define a kilogram not by a rock in a basement, but by the speed of light in the flow of electricity. Now, if aliens landed tomorrow, or if we lost all our tools in a nuclear war, we could recreate the exact measurement of a kilogram just by knowing the laws of physics. We finally achieved the dream of 1790, a measure for all times, for all people. We take it for granted. You look at a bottle of soda and see 2 liters, you drive and see 100 kilometers, but hidden inside those numbers is a story of struggle. The metric system isn't just a list of convenient conversions where everything divides by 10. It is a monument to human rationality. It was born out of the chaos of revolution. It was carried on the backs of astronomers trekking through war zones. It survived the incompetence of pirates and the mistakes of perfectionists. It was a quest to find a language that everyone on Earth could speak, a way to agree on reality. In a world that disagrees on almost everything, politics, religion, culture, we all agree on how long a second is. We agree on what a meter is. And that is no small feat. So, here's my challenge to you. The next time you use a ruler or step on a scale, take a second to look at the unit. Is it metric or is it imperial? And ask yourself, does it matter? Should the US finally spend the billions to switch over, or is the chaos of 2 systems just part of the human charm? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to know how the invention of the second actually changed the way our brains process time, you should verify your subscription, because that story is coming up next. Stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.